Throughout my life, I've seen countless examples of the golden child turned angsty adult rebel. Um, and as somebody who can maybe identify with that a little bit, um, I think a part of him is suppressed in in his developmental hours for the supposed greater good. Um, whether that be for the benefit of his future career or his mannerisms. Um, he is by force molded into a shape different from his very nature. And in doing so, the outside world has a very positive perception of him. Here's this 7 or 8 year old that gets a lot of praise for being quite intelligent, that gets a lot of praise for being quite mature. And I think there's a few things that happen, from my understanding, is what part of some people associate with the idea of fame, where a lot of people like to say that when you get famous, you freeze and you don't grow anymore. And I think to a certain extent, that occurs with this idea of being forcefully molded, or and that doesn't necessarily mean abusive or anything, but being molded, which is something that's a little bit different from your nature, or being molded into a nature. And it's almost like there's you stack a bunch of weights on one side of the scale, for 10, 12 years, and as an individual, you start to see that people say this is good, and then the way that you're acting is good, even if it doesn't always feel natural, even if it seems undeserved almost. Where it's just like I didn't really do anything to be like this. Um, this is just sort of how my life was. I suppose my life was supposed to go, and that how it was always supposed to be. And you see, you tend to freeze. He tends to freeze. He freezes and is like, This is how I have to live the rest of my life." Um, so again, the process is seen as effective by the outside. Um, and you come to this conclusion that this is how I have to be. I get scared when somebody walks by. Keep reading. Anyways, um, yeah, so you concluded that like I should always be like this, and nothing ever has to change. I never have to work or change the way that I approach problems. To change the way he approaches problems. Um, and I think that a big reinforcement of that is a lot of the big changes that have happened. Whereas you go through, um, you live through a pandemic where you're just kind of being at home, and those weights start to come off and off of the scale, and but they come off so quickly that you're violently sent into the other direction. You're violently sent into the other side, and and then your mind starts to go places where you've now told yourself for so long the pressure and the weight from your supposed understanding of the the external, whether that be your parents, whether that be your school or your teachers. Um, he doesn't feel those anymore. They're all gone, and you're now there's nothing pushing you or molding you into a certain shape or to a certain way, and but you've been told that the way you're acting is just fine. The way you believe the way you're acting has been just fine. It's always going to work out like that. And I think what ends up happening is without that forceful molding, without that, you are somewhat lost. Um, he never truly learned where what he wants comes into the picture. And it's not necessarily that someone told him what he was going to do, but it's almost that he felt like there was something that he was supposed to do. And I think there's a nuanced difference, because I don't necessarily always think people like this, or the he in our story, is forced into a certain aspect of things, but it's more so up in and the world he understands is one in which requires specific things for him. And he loses the ability to sort of take a first understand what's going on within himself, in terms of his big picture, and why he chooses to wake up in the morning. That's not an easy thing to teach a 7 or 8 year old, but I think there are certain moments in a child's life where they do learn to do this. Um, and certain things that end up happening is that when you feel like this and you feel penned in for whatever reason into a certain way of being, um, I think your mind gets a little bit scared. It's like, oh, what if we don't end up being like this? And to compensate for that, it doesn't help you, or he doesn't attempt to better himself or try to fill in the gaps that have been left by the sort of freeze that people froze him by calling him mature, by calling him smart, or by saying that wow he's so amazing. But it does somewhat of the opposite, where it gives you these visions, gives you these delusions of you achieving all these great things, and it sort of satiates the feeling that one is given, from people complimenting them or people saying, "Oh, you're like this," or "You're like that," um, and it's almost a zombie. It's a zombie version of true accomplishment, not in terms of maybe how others would see accomplishment, like a gold medal or an award, but in terms of a satisfaction with one's life. And if you can constantly have these visions or delusions of achieving something, that you somewhat get the reward for that. It feels like you've done it and you've been rewarded for it, even if it just happened in your mind. Um, it allows you to keep living a life where you do believe that the way that you're acting is just fine, because you feel the reward from all those things that you imagine in your head, from I don't know, from scoring the winning goal in a World Cup final, or curing some rare disease or something like that, or even overcoming the things that you fear in life. And you end up kind of stuck because you're not playing the game. I guess you're not playing the game out in the world, or you're playing it in your mind, and anything's possible in there. But it doesn't necessarily translate to the satisfaction that life by trial or life in the arena gives you. And again, I look to that analogy of the scale, and somebody placing weights on the scale that is you, and then those weights suddenly all coming off at once, and you're sort of flung into chaos where the scale's just set in the other direction and it's bouncing a little bit, and you don't really know where it's going to land or how to place those stones yourself. And I think for anyone struggling with that, or even to myself, because I think I'm struggling with that a little bit too, it's just first learning how to place those rocks on the scale, for myself, and seeing, how I want them to be placed. And I guess we'll go from there.